In this video, we are going to go over how to convert numbers that are in scientific notation into standard notation, or back into regular old numbers that we're used to seeing. Very simply, we're going to do the opposite operations, or the opposite movements of what we did in converting to scientific notation, which I showed in a previous video. So to convert to standard notation, what I tell students, and what I'm going to tell you, is you do exactly as what the scientific notation tells you to. What do I mean by that? Well, this is telling you to multiply a number by 10 cubed. That is multiplying by 1,000. And we know that for every power of 10 we multiply by, if we're multiplying by a positive power of 10, our number is going to get bigger by that many decimal places. What do I mean? Well, this is like multiplying by 1,000, or 10 to the third power. So this number, 5.78, will get bigger by 1, 2, 3 decimal places, and we'll have a 0 there by that additional decimal place that we have. So if I did 5.78 times 1,000, I would expect to have 5,780. So that one empty decimal place that is left is filled by a 0, again, because the number is getting bigger by a factor of 1,000. So our final answer, 5,780. We'll exercise the same idea here. We have 6.042 times 10 to the 5th. That is equal to 6.042, and now let's move our decimal point 5 places to the right. And you might say, why to the right? Again, 10 to the 5th is a much bigger number, so we would expect this value to get larger. So we're following what this tells us to do. So 5 places to the right is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 2 empty decimal places that we have not accounted for. Those are now, and I shouldn't say decimal places, but tens and digit places here, ones places, and they each now have a 0 because we multiplied this by 100,000. So we're going to have those 2 extra zeros. When we do that, our final answer is 6,04200, which makes sense. You multiplied 6, roughly 6, by 100,000, you're going to get a number that is roughly 600,000. Isn't that awesome? I think it is, personally. Okay, now what happens when we multiply by a negative exponent? Well, we know from our previous studies that a negative exponent, this would be the same as doing 1 over 10 squared. So you're essentially multiplying by 1 over 100, which will make this number smaller by 2 decimal places. So that means we're going to move our decimal place to the left, 1, 2 places, and now we have a 0 here because we have a decimal place that is unoccupied by a number. The main idea here again is remembering not that when you have a negative exponent you must move your decimal point to the left. That's true, but the reason why again is you are multiplying by 10 to the negative 2, so this number, 8.964, is going to become smaller by 2 decimal places. So your final answer is 0.08964. Last but certainly not least, we have 3.04 times 10 to the negative 6th. I'm going to erase that 4, so we got some room here. Well, that is 1 over 10 to the 6th, or 1 over 1 million, so we can expect this to get smaller by a factor of 6 decimal places. So we move it over once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more zeros, in addition to moving it over the decimal place one other time, to give us 6 total decimal places that we are losing or getting smaller by because we're multiplying by 1/1,000,000th. So your final answer is 0.12345 304. So it was a very small number to begin with. So at the end of the day here, don't just memorize the rules, do what the scientific notation tells you to. Again, here we were multiplying 5.78 by a bigger number. 10 to the third is a bigger number, so our decimal place goes to the right by 3 decimal places because we expect to enlarge or multiply that number by a larger amount. Here we had 8.964 times 10 to the negative 2. Multiplying by 10 to the negative 2 makes this number much smaller because we're multiplying by 1 over 100. So by 2 decimal places, we move our decimal point. So you can memorize which way to move the decimal point, but if you know why it works, like we just talked about, you are so much more powerful and ready to tackle these problems.